it seems to be really boring here. Let's everyone get up a little bit. It's okay, Latvia. It's okay. Trust me, trust me. It's going to be fine. And look at the person next to you. If you don't have a person, go next to the person. Just look at them in the face, in the eyes. And tell them your favorite color. Just tell them your favorite color of that person. And then once you're done, really big high five. Really big high five to each other. That's it, right? Okay, that is the power of community. When people come together, good things can happen. Now you can sit down and you can be boring again. All right. Cool. In 1890, there was a really interesting guy who lived in north of Germany, nearby Berlin, and he created something very extraordinary. By that time, we didn't really have engines that will take us far. We didn't have engines that will move masses beyond steam engines, which were not that reliable. This guy had an idea. He thought to himself that he should make an engine that is much more efficient than steam, and it should be free for everybody to use. And this freedom should also allow not just for personal use, but also masses to use. After a couple of years of inventing and also almost killing himself, he thought to himself that this engine should be actually more than free. It should be applied across the world, and it should move countries. But he didn't have anyone to actually take the engine and implement it in his own or in their own invention. Until 1895, he heard about a guy in South Germany that was creating a vehicle that moves without horses, without horses, and can move beyond 30 kilometers, which was quite revolutionary. These two people tried to meet for the next 5 years, and they just couldn't, because they couldn't meet. It was too far to meet between Stuttgart and in Berlin. There was too much going on. There were little wars. There was too much weather that impeded their travels. However, their wives met. Their wives played a really important role in this. The wife of the guy who made the car in the south was called Bertha Benz. And the lady in the north, who was the wife of the guy who created the engine, was called Maria Diesel. And their husbands created something incredible that I think you guys all use today. It is a diesel engine, and it's the car. Karl Benz created the vehicle that we use today. Mercedes-Benz came from there. And Rudolf Diesel created an engine that we all hear about every day of our lives. Diesel disappeared mysteriously. He disappeared as a poor man. He disappeared as a lonely man. His family has given up on him. His friend given up on him because he didn't want to charge for the engine. He didn't want to charge money. He said it should be free. It should move people. That's why Germany became really powerful, because German government and the countries and the local areas around Germany really took on their heart this diesel engine improvement. The other countries didn't. And that's why Germany became a real powerhouse only 30 years later. So why do I keep mentioning these two guys? I'm a fan of them. I've been reading about them since I was pretty much like 8 or 9 years old. And I think it's important that we really recognize where inventions come from. Karl Benz invented the engine when he was in his little greenhouse in south of Stuttgart. You can still go and visit it. And he was working there alone. His only partner was his wife. But he couldn't make the car happen. He had to have other people around him. Finally, before their wives met Diesel, he also met 2 other important people. Gottlieb Daimler was one of the most magnificent engineers of our lifetimes. Actually, I think in our history of our humanity. He created piston engines. But he couldn't do it alone. He had to meet someone else, Wilhelm Maybach. And if you go around, especially in St. Petersburg or Moscow or Dubai, you see these ridiculously long, expensive cars called Maybach. That is Mercedes-Benz's key engineer. And the star for Mercedes-Benz, the 3 stars, is not only air, land, and sea, is also Maybach, Daimler, and Benz. And today we call petrol engines, the chemical that goes into petrol engines, benzene. It comes from Karl Benz. None of these guys could do it alone. And yet today, we're thinking that we can create a product on our own, in our rooms, in our garages, and launch it to the world completely alone. That could be fast, but it won't get you far. So I think mobility does move the world. And do you have the clicker somewhere, by the way? It's here or something? Or should I just... No? Oh, it's this one? Cool. No worries, you did well. Okay. I want to tell you one more story that I love, because I'm into mobility a lot. I love driving fast cars. They almost killed me, and I will do it again and again and again until probably I die. I love fast cars. I love the sound of petrol engine. I'm completely against electric cars, which is a shock to a lot of my partners and friends. But I am against them. I don't think they're a solution to anything, except maybe sound in the cities. But 15 years ago, something changed. There's a company in France that I'm not allowed to mention the brand name, but you can figure it out. It's a French car company, really old. They have a lion on their logo. But 15 years ago, the chief executive officer said they need a new car. So they made a new car. But the way they made a new car really paves the way we are now seeing innovation happen in the world. So they set up 4 teams. These 4 teams worked all individually in silos, and not communicating to each other. The project managers didn't communicate to each other, neither did the engineers. They just built the ideal car, all the components that they have to build. And once they had to actually show the car to the CEO was absolutely in shock. He was terrified. He was horrendous. He said that this is the absolute disaster. How could this happen? We've poured millions and millions into this. There's almost 20,000 people working on making this piece of S car. Because they worked without communicating each other. There was no open plan communication. There was no ecosystem to support it. And siloed ecosystems are killing a lot of things these days. That's why a lot of our innovation comes from ecosystems. And ecosystems are not just the keyword that we can throw around. It actually is that what keeps us alive. Forests, seas, all the things that we don't even see around the world, they're ecosystems that keep us alive. I know right now here the most important thing for you is probably your phone and the guy speaking on the stage. But after you leave, you should think about the ecosystems that keep you and your friends and your family alive and moving. And this requires crazy people. Nobody normal in the world has created something extraordinary. And these crazy people can be anybody. They can be the normal and boring guy previously. But once that boring or normal guy goes into an ecosystem where there's crazy people, great stuff happens. But you need to be open to it. And there is a lot of innovation happening. But so small part of it we see on the streets today. Now, I don't think there is such thing that is called invention these days. I think we re-innovate or reinvent the things that is already on the streets today. And I'm passionate about things I see, not things that are coming ahead, like in 10 or 15 years' time. If we believe what the United Nations is telling us, that we have only 11 years to turn this earth around, then all of us should be thinking about solutions right now. But we are not. We're quite selfish human beings. We just want to live for ourselves, have a great parties, and then see what happens tomorrow. But some people do create innovations. And innovations, something like this, can change the way we not only communicate with each other, not only that we innovate with each other, but we actually move this planet to another chapter. Now, something like Hyperloop, which has been going on for a couple of years, is really utopian idea, right? Like 1,000 kilometers per hour, from Riga to Madrid will take you 3 hours? That's not possible. But I bet your grandparents said the same thing about airplanes. I bet they said the same thing about when you actually show your phone that you can make money out of an app that nobody will even see physically, or touch physically, can make money. Utopian ideas and crazy ideas move people. They move ideas. They move everything that is around us. And they can change the way we consume not only information, but also create better lives for our children. And that's what it's about, right? Because we are very narcissistic species. We are only thinking about ourselves. And that's fine. But with innovation like this, we can also think about the world, the earth. Ecosystems are crucial. Like my good friend Antti will come on stage and say, ecosystems are everything that is important in the world's economy right now. No economy on their own can create something like Hyperloop and implement it. I mean, look at North Korea. Completely siloed. Look at Iran, completely siloed. You cannot thrive in this world being siloed. So ecosystems are super important. But also crazy ideas beyond Hyperloop can take our species to another planet. Now, Blue Origin, which is this penis-looking rocket, it actually is a really interesting company. Jeff Bezos' personal playground, billions and billions of euros going into this. Why? Why does he want to go to Mars? Not just because to save himself and his family, but he thinks that this innovation, once he's dead, will actually pave the way for the next generation of innovators. And people that work in this team are really interesting. You should check this company out. They're around 20 to 30, 27 years old. Bob Smith, the CEO, is the oldest, but the rest of the people are quite young. They barely have graduated. Jeff had an idea. Instead of just launching rockets and bringing them back, why don't we get people in small teams to work together and be completely flat? But there is a dictator on top. Bob Smith, he's an absolute dictator. There is no voting. There is no asking. He says it goes. But he has teams around him that have built an ecosystem that takes this rocket to Mars, hopefully one day. And these teams are small enough to share one pizza. So it is like 2 or 3 or 3 or 4 people. And if the pizza is perfect, I mean, there's nothing left over, it's a good team. If there's something left over after a big pizza, like we're talking about American-sized pizzas, then you need another person. Ecosystems get things done. And they create also vehicles and transportation systems that we use today. I mean, this looks like a computer-generated image, and it is, but it actually is right now existing. This is a very interesting yacht. It has a submarine underneath. That is a biplaza drone that takes the owner to wherever he wants to go. He has landing permits in many, many countries around the world, even in the European Union. This was created by 4 guys in Lausanne, in Switzerland, that got incredibly drunk after a whole weekend and created this yacht, and they pitched it to the rich guy and said, this will create a new wave of shipping. And this yacht has 3 engines. Hydrogen, it has obviously the benzene or diesel, but it also has electric, which works almost like a fusion energy. So they wanted to connect 3 engines in a underground, or actually in the bottom of the ship, and that moves the ships beyond anything else. So it doesn't even need to have new fuel. It's a really crazy idea that hydrogen, diesel, and electric engines can work unison to move this huge ship. And it doesn't need to actually dock anywhere for months. It can just keep going and going and going. But it's not that utopian. I mean, this is going to cost a couple of €100 million. If you have that, definitely buy it. But this thing is not so utopian. Volocopter and this kind of drones around the world are right now operating. And they're operating in countries that are unison in direction. They are very clear on what they want to do. It's not to be another country that just wants to be alive and prosper somehow, but they want to be on the edge, on the pinnacle of innovation. They want to be first. And this happens because the ecosystem within that country, like Singapore, like in Dubai, and like the United States, they have a purpose. They have a driven goal. I don't know what's the goal of Latvia or Lithuania or other countries, but Singapore has a single clear goal: to be the absolute winner of mobility, be always in the charge, be always leading the mobility of it. And these things are happening there right now. This kind of pods already starting to move by little after testing, and hopefully by next year or in 2 years' time, they'll be able to move passengers. And that's why I had an idea. I always like to organize parties. You might even be in some of my parties before. And I like parties. They're not just a place to get drunk or have fun. It's actually a place to get people relaxed and talk to each other and create ideas. So parties led to conferences, conferences led to workshops, etc., etc. And I always met these cool people who were creating cars. I worked closely with Mercedes, Porsche, and other really high-profile car brands. And I always asked them one question, it's like, how are you not being able to copy the best of Mercedes or Lamborghini? Or are you not talking with Tesla, or are you not talking with the Koenigsegg? How is that possible that you guys are not communicating? And how is it possible that 16 super tankers in the world pollute as much as all the passenger vehicles combined? Maersk, which is one of the world's biggest companies in transportation, has, of these 16 super tankers, 9 in their list. 9 of these ships. Now, you guys might not be caring about that much, but those ships, the emissions transform and change our DNA. It's so detrimental to our DNA, to our body, that one of these ships, when it docks to Rotterdam or to Copenhagen or to Venice, it modifies our DNA. It's absolutely toxic. But they're desperate for innovation. They need desperate innovation. And like we're going to talk hopefully in a panel, this innovation is already existing, but it's too expensive to implement. It's too expensive to implement, and that's because everyone who's doing things, important things, they live in so far away from each other. They don't communicate. They don't sit together. They don't get drunk. They don't look at each other. They don't have dinners with each other. They compete against each other. And this impacts all of us. It doesn't matter how many trees and how many vegans, etc. in the world. We have these 16 ships sailing across the world, polluting so much with the innovation that exists, and we're not able to put them in the ships because these people just don't communicate. They don't live in the same ideology. So I came up with the idea of a mobility city campus. Bring all these people into one physical space. Now, the idea is a global idea. We want to have over 15 hectares. It started with 10, but now it's going to 15 hectares of a physical space. Now imagine, it's like a city. It's like a real city. But instead of being generic city, it's a focused city. Everyone that has anything to do with mobility, either investments, innovation, or media, or even making ships, planes, whatever, from engineers to students to executives to their families will live and communicate and go to gym and go to restaurants and invite the guests to stay in this one little city. Now, we're starting from Rotterdam, Netherlands being extremely forward-looking nation and relatively small and neutral, which is a really good basis for innovation. They've offered us an area in the port of Rotterdam. Now, Port of Rotterdam is a great example of how an entire city relies on almost entirely in one company. Now, this is a magnificently huge company. It's top 10 ports in the world. It moves European commerce, basically, almost on its own. It's an over 60 billion euro company. But now they're becoming smarter. They want to push the innovation, push the port to westbound. They're creating a new port out of the sea. They're actually creating land. And there is a saying called, maybe God created the earth, but the Dutch created the Netherlands. And it's definitely true because the Dutch are incredibly innovative people. And they are really kind enough to give us this one location. Now, this location, hopefully, in the future, will be hosting the Mobility City campus where you guys can come and experience the mobility. Now, this is also one thing that I want to stress. We're going to talk about a lot of innovation here. There's going to be a lot of smarter people, better looking people than myself coming on stage and talking about a lot of stuff that you won't see or experience in your lifetimes. You just hear about it, just like anything on YouTube. But I want this to be an experience that me, you, your grandparents, your children, your parents can actually go and see what's happening physically in innovation of mobility, and that can inspire all of us. Instead of making games, instead of making other applications that really don't have any impact on our lives physically, mobility has an impact. If we create a great field, if there is a guy in India and another guy in Uruguay that both are creating the same thing at the same time, but if they don't communicate to each other, they never meet each other. We might have lost one of the most important innovations in our lifetime just because these two guys didn't meet. Now, I want these two guys to live in this place. And I want that to be the future of us, so that we not only talk about innovation, but we see it and we work unison as a species and as a city to create a world that's not a better place, it's just more efficient. I think the world we have right now is already perfect enough. I don't want to go anywhere else. I'm happy here. I like what's happening here, but we can make it much better. Just like Diesel and Benz, we can create an incredible future for us by just being together, just like this conference. And my time is up, but I would like to thank everyone here, and I think thanks very much.
Thanks.
Yes.
Yes, I'm hearing. So thank you, Kayvan, for mentioning a human aspect. Today's festival is about human touch in this digital age and meeting people, talking together.